The sun was just rising over Millbrook County as Zeke's truck rolled down the gravel driveway. A thermos of hot coffee steamed on the dashboard. He'd been gone for 3 weeks, helping his daughter Sarah through a nasty divorce in Oregon. Now, all he wanted was peace. Morning coffee, maybe fix the old gate if he felt like it. But something felt off. No cattle. No birds. Just the strange sound of children laughing, lawnmowers buzzing, and the distant hum of sprinklers. He stepped out, scanning the horizon, puzzled. The land didn't feel like home anymore. Something had changed. He grabbed his surveying gear, heading down the path toward the back 40. The familiar dirt trail was replaced with neatly cut grass. Trimmed hedges. A metal slide gleaming in the morning sun. He walked faster. And then he saw it. Rows of houses. Clean driveways. Mailboxes with numbers. Sprinklers dancing across perfect lawns. Where his cattle once grazed, there now stood an entire subdivision. Not a trailer. Not a cabin. 98 brand new homes. A banner flapped in the wind. Sweetwater Springs, Phase 2 now selling. He stared in disbelief. In the middle of it all was a billboard with her face on it, Victoria Ashworth. Head of the HOA. Founder of this invasion. She turned his family land into a neighborhood brochure. Without his permission. Without even a phone call. He walked back the next day with his gear, marking his boundaries, checking GPS points. Doing what he did best. 30 minutes later, the sheriff showed up with a restraining order. Victoria stood behind them, arms folded, a smug smile across her face. She claimed he was a threat. Said the survey equipment was scaring children. But what she didn't know was this land held more than history. Zeke stayed up late that night, flipping through dusty documents in his grandfather's old desk. Then he found it. A legal clause buried deep in the original deed. Signed in 1924. It was simple. If someone built on this land without a proper sale agreement, every structure reverted to the original landowner. In other words, every single house was his. I came home expecting to see my cattle. Instead, I saw driveways. Neatly chalked. I saw minivans, lawn gnomes, U-Hauls, and kids riding scooters. Where wildflowers used to grow, there were now fire pits and barbecue grills. Where my grandfather's fence once stood, someone had installed a dog park. I didn't understand at first. Thought maybe I took the wrong turn. But then I saw the sign, Welcome to Whispering Pines, a Victoria Ashworth community. Victoria Ashworth. HOA Queen. Clipboard tyrant. The woman who spent the last 8 years trying to buy my land at garage sale prices. Now she'd stolen it. And the first thing she did, she served me a restraining order. Said I was intimidating families with dangerous equipment. She meant my surveyor's gear. That I'd used for 4 decades to help farmers settle boundary fights and keep people honest. Now I was the threat. But what Victoria didn't know. My grandfather was a smart man. In 1924, he had a clause added to the deed. Any permanent development built on this land, without legal transfer, automatically reverted ownership back to the original holder. Me. 98 homes. $34 million in suburban dreams. And all of them sitting on stolen soil. My name's Ezekiel Thornfield, Zeke to friends. I'm 67, and I've spent most of my life walking property lines with a thermos of black coffee and a pair of muddy boots. Granddad used to say, you don't know land until you've bled on it. And Lord, I've bled. I've watched these hills roll through drought, flood, and subdivision threats. After my Martha passed, it was just me, the cattle, and a farmhouse that creaked louder in the wind. I'd gotten used to quiet. To the smell of honeysuckle and diesel drifting off the highway. To mornings where the loudest thing was gravel under my boots. Until Vicky Ashworth. Blonde Bob, Lexus SUV, and that pinched look that says, I call the cops on lemonade stands. She'd sent her people with offers. Always, once in a lifetime, deals. Always dressed in perfume thick enough to choke a mule. I told her no. Every time. And while I was out in Oregon, helping my daughter through a divorce. She made her move. Poured foundations. Sold homes. Moved in families. Like I'd never existed. But I had records. Deeds. Contracts. Survey maps going back 100 years. She thought she'd outmaneuvered some tired old farmer. What she did was sign over an entire subdivision to me. And she had no idea. The moment my boots hit that pasture, I knew something was off. The air didn't smell like creek water or wildflowers, it smelled like asphalt and plywood. I walked a little further, and dropped my coffee mug. It shattered against limestone as I stared across the ridge at 98 freshly painted houses stretching across my land. Lawns trimmed like golf courses. Vinyl fences gleaming in the sun. A fancy stone entrance that read, Heritage Meadows Estates, in cursive more pretentious than a wedding invitation. Kids were drawing chalk art on driveways. Dogs chased tennis balls through yards where my Angus cattle used to roam free. Families were unloading furniture. I stood frozen, wondering if maybe I'd crossed into another county by mistake. But then I saw the oak tree. The one where Martha carved her initials beside mine in 1972. And I saw Willow Creek where Grandpa taught me to fish. No, this was my land. Someone had just paved over my memories. Then came the buzzing of a golf cart. And there she was. Victoria Ashworth. Perfectly pressed blazer. Oversized sunglasses. HOA badge clipped to her lapel like she worked for Homeland Security. "Excuse me, sir," she called, oozing fake politeness. "This is private property. Heritage Meadows is a gated community. Residents and invited guests only." I looked at her, then back at my land. My trees. My creek. My history. "Ma'am," I said carefully, holding back 30 years of rage, "this is my property. Has been since 1994. She actually laughed. "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. The Heritage Meadows development was legally purchased from Millbrook Development Corporation 2 years ago." She pulled out a folder thick enough to knock out a bull and started flipping through it like she was teaching me a lesson. "See here. 847 acres. Fair market value. I'm sure this is just a little surveying error on your part." Her tone turned my stomach. But I didn't lose my cool. I dealt with land thieves before. I knew the playbook. Document. Stay calm. Prove them wrong with facts, not fists. Mind if I see those documents? "I'm not legally required to share private HOA business with trespassers," she sniffed. "But I'm feeling generous. These families have children starting school in 2 weeks. I'm sure we can work out an arrangement." That's when it hit me. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't a mistake. This was a heist. And I was standing in the middle of it. 3 days later, Deputy Mike Ashworth, Vicky's husband, showed up at my porch with a smug grin and a stack of paperwork. A restraining order. Said I was threatening residents with dangerous surveying equipment. Apparently, in Sweetwater Springs, a measuring will now counted as a weapon. I was officially banned from my own land. Mike made sure I understood, any violation meant jail time. It didn't stop there. Vicky sent letters to every Heritage Meadows resident, warning them of the unstable former landowner. She started a neighborhood safety committee. Folks with walkie-talkies and reflective vests patrolled the edge of my property, snapping photos of me like I was cooking meth in a barn. Then came the social media smear campaign. She posted side-by-side photos in the Sweetwater Springs Facebook group. My weathered old farmhouse versus her perfect subdivision. Claimed my uncared-for eyesore was attracting vermin and tanking property values. Comments poured in. Some defended me. Most believed her. That's when I went to work. I drove to the county courthouse. Started digging. First red flag. The filing fee for the alleged transfer of my land, $50. $50. For an 847-acre deal. I've done this too long. In Tennessee, large land transfers require notarized affidavits, multiple witnesses, and fees that match the transaction size. This whole thing smelled like week-old catfish. Then came the nail in the coffin. The notary stamp on the sale. Eleanor Hutchkins. Sweet lady. Made peach cobbler so good it won state fair ribbons. She also died 6 months before that paperwork was filed. I called Clarence Bulldog Mackenzie, my old friend and one of the sharpest surveyors in 3 counties. The man's forgotten more property law than most attorneys ever learn. He spent 2 days walking my fence lines with GPS gear, spitting tobacco and muttering curse words under his breath. Finally, he looked at me and said, "Zeke, your lines are accurate within 6 inches. That subdivision squatting on your land like fleas on a hound dog." While I built my case, Vicky escalated. She hired Sentinel security. Armed golf carts now patrolled my pasture. Radio headsets. Tactical vests. You'd think I was raising insurgents instead of cattle. Then she filed a complaint with the state licensing board. Claimed I was mentally unfit and a danger to the public. Her evidence. I'd insisted on entering my own property. The county piled on. Threatened to condemn my house as a public nuisance. Said it didn't match the aesthetic of the neighborhood. One night, I was checking the fence line when I spotted something in the trees. A camera. Then another. Cables ran from the trees back to the subdivision, into my power meter. They were tapping my electricity to run surveillance on me. I used an old trick I'd picked up helping catch copper thieves, electromagnetic field detector from the hardware store. The readings proved it, those cameras had been running for months. I sat in Martha's old garden. The scent of her roses thick in the air. And for a moment, I considered giving in. Taking whatever offer Vicky wanted to throw my way. Selling out. Starting fresh somewhere warm. But then I remembered what Grandpa told me when the railroad tried stealing our mineral rights back in '89. When they come for your land, they're not just stealing dirt. They're stealing your family's history. Martha wrote in her journal that night, "Zeke never backs down from what's right." She was right. 2 weeks later, Vicky tried playing the media card. Channel 7 News rolled up to Heritage Meadows like they were covering a crime scene. Satellite trucks. Boom mics. Anchors with grave voices. The story? They called me delusional. A danger to young families. Channel 7 brought in tearful moms clutching designer babies, panning their cameras like I was some unhinged hermit hoarding land in a modern-day ghost story. Then came Vicky, 5 uninterrupted minutes of crocodile tears and trembling voice. "We just want peace," she sniffled, tissues dry as dust. "It breaks my heart, but we can't let one man's confusion put our children at risk." They cast me as the villain in a Lifetime special. But while she played victim for ratings, I did what surveyors do best, follow the trails, read between the lines. My property insurance? Cancelled the next morning. They claimed my land had changed usage, aerial photos showed new housing. But I hadn't built a damn thing. Then I remembered 2003, helping my neighbor Jim catch an insurance fraud ring. One trick stuck with me, insiders triggering cancellations just before accidents conveniently happen. Guess who worked part-time for Mutual Trust Insurance? Vicky Ashworth. She had access. She had motive. She pulled the plug. Then came the judge, Harold Peton. Played golf with Brad. Held stock in 3 different development firms. They didn't even pretend to be fair. My court-appointed lawyer mispronounced my name, smelled like bourbon, and told me to settle. Said reality doesn't care about maps. When I demanded a jury trial, they postponed. Indefinitely. Maybe they hoped I'd die before it ever reached court. Meanwhile, Vicky whipped the HOA families into a frenzy. Told them their property values would plummet if I won. Started a defense fund. Raised $50,000. Then jetted off to Tuscany with Brad on what she called a restorative healing trip. Their wine tour photos had more tags than a clearance rack. Families ran bake sales and car washes, funding their own destruction like cult members in matching aprons. But I wasn't sitting idle. Sarah had helped me install an app on my phone, recorded every word, every threat. Time-stamped, GPS logged. Trail cams too. Legal, discreet, and always watching. The harassment escalated. Dead animals on my porch, possums, then a raccoon that stank like something hell rejected. Nails in my driveway. 2 flat tires. Anonymous calls, whispering, accidents happen, old man. Always at 3 a.m. Always just quiet enough to feel real. They blocked my mailbox. Claimed it was on HOA easement. Sentinel guards threatened arrest for touching my own damn mail. And then, when I was nearly out of strength, she arrived. Jeans, notebook, sharp eyes, Ruby Morgan. Investigative reporter. New to town, burned out from big city corruption. Said something didn't smell right. Said Channel 7 story felt rehearsed. She reviewed my documents. Independently. 3 days straight. Dug through public records, old maps, even internet archives. Found HOA brochures dated 2 years before they bought the land. Caught them red-handed, planning Heritage Meadows in 2021. Before I ever signed anything. Before they claimed it was theirs. She found Brad's sealed juvenile record. Real estate fraud. Kentucky. Our charming town councilman had experience. Then came the eminent domain threat. The county said they needed my land for community growth. Offered me $80,000 for 847 acres worth $12 million. Called it fair. My water turned brown. Cattle started limping. Blood tests showed toxins, runoff from their storm drains, flowing from the subdivision into my well. I ended up in the hospital. Chest pains. 4 in one arm. Antiseptic in my nose. Doctor told me to reduce stress. Maybe consider assisted living. Then came Vicky. Alone. In pearls. With a smile like a scalpel and an envelope in hand. Zeke, she whispered, this can all go away. $200,000. Think about your family. Is dirt really worth dying over? And that's when it hit me. This was never just about land. This wasn't just about land anymore, it was about exposing criminals hiding behind the polished mask of suburbia. Getting out of that hospital bed felt like waking up from a nightmare into a war zone. While I'd been lying there, Vicky and Brad had been hard at work, pulling political strings slicker than Vegas con artists. Brad filed an emergency city council resolution to annex Heritage Meadows into Sweetwater Springs city limits, a move that would override county laws and place the land fully under his control. They buried the announcement in obscure legal classifieds, hoping no one would notice. But Ruby did. Her investigation uncovered fraud so deep it made Watergate look like child's play, forged documents, stolen notary identities, digital signature theft. Meanwhile, Vicky was extorting residents, demanding thousands in legal defense fees, threatening foreclosure if they didn't pay. Families whispered their fears to me over midnight phone calls, wondering why their HOA queen needed luxury cars to fight one old man with a measuring tape. I brought in a building inspector, and what he found broke my heart: 47 code violations, swamp land buried under homes, faulty wiring that could torch the whole neighborhood. Vicky's panic hit new heights. She tried bribing my doctor with $20,000 to declare me mentally incompetent, and hired a sleazy PI to discredit my military record. But Ruby dropped a bombshell: the land they built on was federally protected wetlands. Brad's company had falsified surveys and destroyed endangered habitats, risking EPA fines that could bankrupt the entire HOA. Then Danny Kowalski, the construction foreman, broke his silence: photos, surveys, the whole truth. Heritage Meadows wasn't just illegal, it was built on lies, concrete, and corruption. Ruby traced the funding through shell companies and foreign accounts, full-blown money laundering. Homeowners were waking up to a nightmare: their deeds were worthless, their homes built on someone else's land. Vicky tried to save face with a family festival on the day of the city vote: bounce houses, barbecue, politicians, the media. But we flipped the script. EPA inspectors were coming. Danny would testify. And I had proof: my grandfather's 1924 railroad contracts that proved I owned that land long before they built on it. The truth was ready to erupt in front of the entire county. Then Ruby called 3 days before the festival, breathless: Zeke, get to the courthouse basement, I found something that'll blow this case apart like dynamite in a henhouse. I drove through the fog, heart pounding. Ruby met me at the back door, coffee-stained papers in hand, eyes blazing. "Railway archives," she said, dragging me down to a dusty basement filled with forgotten files. She spread them across the table, yellowed, flickering under cheap lights, and smiled. "Zeke, you're not just the landowner. You're the heir to something they never saw coming."